Hits are a part of the game of football. It is a game of extreme violence, and there's really no way around that. The sound of a bone-crushing hit is something that gets fans off their seats and cheer in excitement. And one player that would guarantee hit after hit in a game is that of the safety. These defensive backs, who typically line up 10 to 15 yards behind the line of scrimmage, are the ones solely responsible for putting the fear of God into grown men. Opposing receivers always had to think twice about going down the middle or towards the sidelines, as there would always be a safety beelining right at them. And today's list is a group of the 10 hardest hitting safeties in NFL history. Guys, quickly before we jump in, if you've watched and enjoyed some of my content, do me a favor and turn on all notifications. A lot of you have complained that my videos simply aren't reaching out to your homepages.
Billy Martin, straight from Brooklyn, better known as Brooklyn. Never taking shorts cause Brooklyn's the bomb.
One of the best all-around defensive players in NFL history, Troy Polamalu made a name for himself with vicious hits and tackles. Troy earned a reputation as one of the most feared safeties in the league because of his ability to make big plays in all facets of the game. The former safety had been the face of the Pittsburgh Steelers defense since the turn of the millennium, and it was mainly due to his physical toughness and his ability to strike fear in opponents' eyes. He was never the biggest, fastest, or strongest, but could hit like a ton of bricks. Troy had great instincts, seeing plays develop well in advance, and always got to the ball quickly. He possessed the skill of dishing out the most brutal hits when players were most vulnerable. And with 2 Super Bowls to his name, a Defensive Player of the Year award, and 8 Pro Bowl selections, the Hall of Fame safety goes down as one of the greatest to ever play the game. Largely considered a boom in the Legion of Boom, Chancellor was a wrecking ball in one of the greatest NFL defenses of all time. One of the staples in Seattle's LOB defense in the last decade, Kam was a hard-hitting safety who made those around him much better. A clear leader on the defense, the former Virginia Tech safety had the ability to track down opposing players and level them with clean hits and tackles. While Kam may not have the hardest hits on this list due to NFL rule changes, but in no way would anyone scoff at the mere mentioning of his name among the hardest hitters. And if you need further proof, just ask former 49ers tight end Vernon Davis, a 6'3", 250-pound tight end who was on the wrong end of 2 of Kam Chancellor's biggest hits. While injuries took a toll on the safety's body, his career would be cut short after 8 seasons, but not before he would cement himself in NFL lore with a Super Bowl. Kam and the Legion of Boom were largely the main reason for Seattle's first Super Bowl title in 2013, holding Peyton Manning and the Denver Broncos to just 8 points. Oh yeah, Kam also stamped his presence in this game with a huge hit on wide receiver Demaryius Thomas, who looked like he had just collided with a Mack truck. Ronnie Lott was one of the most dominant players in the NFL during the 80s and early 90s. Transitioning from cornerback to safety midway through his career, Lott was a fierce hitter. He was a versatile DB who could play both corner positions as well as the free and strong safety position. A 10-time Pro Bowler and 8-time first-team All-Pro, Ronnie Lott's accolades did not just stop with individual achievements. With the 49ers, the Hall of Fame safety was a part of the San Francisco team that won 4 Super Bowl titles in the 80s and was a key member in that 49ers defense. And one of Ronnie's most memorable hits came on the biggest stage during Super Bowl 23 against the Cincinnati Bengals. Then Bengals running back Ickey Woods was bulldozing right through the 49ers defense all game until Lott hit him square and made his presence felt in the game. And from then on, this propelled San Fran's defense for the rest of the game and set the tempo against Cincinnati's offense. Labeled as the hardest hitter in the NFL by Sports Illustrated, Sean Taylor only played 4 seasons as his career was cut short by his untimely death in 2007. A product of the Miami Hurricanes, known for producing some of the greatest defensive talents the game has seen, Taylor left the world with many memorable hits. However, none would be more iconic than his vicious hit on punter Brian Moorman in the 2007 Pro Bowl. As the AFC team lined up to punt the ball, the plan was to fake a punt with Moorman running the ball down the right. However, this play would be snuffed out by the former Washington safety, and what ensued would be one of the biggest hits leveled on one of the smallest opponents you could ever imagine. The one word that describes Rodney Harrison is passion. The former safety made a career of beheading opposing players for 15 seasons with the New England Patriots and San Diego Chargers, which resulted in countless fines over his career. Labeled as a dirty player, Rodney was twice voted by his peers as the game's dirtiest player, which is probably why he only has 2 Pro Bowl selections to his name, a selection which is voted in by players, coaches, and fans. But that being said, Rodney Harrison was a player who played with passion in the violent and physical game of football. He was the type of player you always wanted on your side of the field. Never one to be called out for taking a play off or not giving his all, players and teammates would only speak of him in glowing praise. A 2-time Super Bowl champion with the Patriots, Harrison has etched his name on this list as one of the hardest hitters in NFL history. With a nickname like Weapon X, you sure as hell know Brian Dawkins is one tough SOB. He was the type of safety that would inject fear to any opposing player going down the middle. And during his 16 seasons in the NFL, the Hall of Fame safety spent most of his career with the Philadelphia Eagles before finishing his career off with the Denver Broncos. One of the game's biggest hitters, Dawkins was the heart and soul of the Eagles defense during the late 90s and 2000s. A fan favorite of Philadelphia, Brian's hard-hitting style, toughness, and grit was what personified him as an Eagle. And nowhere would this be more evident than against one of the Eagles' bitter NFC rivals, the Atlanta Falcons. In two separate playoff games in the early part of the millennium, Brian Dawkins laid out two huge hits that left both players on the ground way after the play had ended. In the 2002 divisional game, Falcons' elusive QB Michael Vick, after reading all his options, decided to make a run towards the end zone only for Dawkins to come out of nowhere with a bone-crushing hit. And in the 2004 NFC Championship game, with only minutes left in the first half, Vick connected with Falcons tight end Algie Crumpler down the middle, only to be met by a huge hit from Dawkins at the 10-yard line. This hit left the 275-pound tight end stumbling on the ground and clearly winded. Playing for the Bucs team in the 90s that dominated opposing offenses, Lynch was one of the main cogs in the 0-2 Bucs defense that included the likes of Warren Sapp and Derek Brooks. An old-school safety, it's hard to imagine if Lynch's hard-hitting style would be allowed in today's game. He was the type of safety that wouldn't accept hitting an opposing player low, but rather in the mouth. He even wouldn't give family members a pass, as out on a cold night in 1997 in Soldier Field, Lynch lit up his own brother-in-law John Elred after he caught a 9-yard pass that put the tight end in Lynch's path. During John's 15th season in the NFL, the Hall of Fame safety also played for the Denver Broncos, where he amassed a career total of over 1,000 tackles, 16 forced fumbles, and 26 interceptions. With a nickname like the Assassin, it doesn't come much of a shock that Jack Tatum comes in at number 3 on this list. Tatum had a history that rocked the NFL. During a preseason game in 1978, Patriots wide receiver Darren Stingley stretched for a pass that set his head right into Tatum's shoulder. The hit compressed Stingley's spinal cord and left him paralyzed, leaving him as a quadriplegic until his death. Jack was cut from a different cloth, and this was clearly evident from the lack of remorse he showed Stingley after his vicious hit. Tatum was never one to be apologetic for his headhunting ways. The former safety played 9 seasons with the Oakland Raiders, where he won a Super Bowl in the 1976 season and is largely remembered for his part in the immaculate reception in a divisional playoff game against the Steelers. Night Train Lane cracks the list for good reason. A defensive back for the Rams, who also played cornerback and safety, Lane actually wasn't signed out of college. He asked to have a tryout that ultimately earned him a spot on the team. Throughout his career, Lane became known as one of the NFL's most ferocious tacklers, including a big tackle on John Arnett that led to an NFL rule change about grabbing a player's face mask. Lane had a habit of tackling people by the head, which is no longer legal, but helped define him as one of the most ruthless tacklers in the game at the time. He was one of the most feared men on the field and was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1974. Drafted out of Arkansas in the first round of the 1989 draft, Steve was a 2-time Super Bowl champion, an 8-time Pro Bowler, and a Hall of Fame safety. During his 11-year career with the Broncos and Jets, Atwater was universally regarded as the enforcer who smashed wide receivers and ball carriers around the league. He was an intimidating safety that many wide receivers today would not survive his gut-wrenching hits. Throwing his body around to make the most insane hits, Steve was once involved in a collision that left all 3 players knocked out, including himself. He inflicted some of the most brutal hits still to this day that you'll ever see, and one of the most memorable blows he laid out happened against Christian Okoye on September 1990 in a Monday night showdown against the Chiefs. Nicknamed the Nigerian Nightmare, Christian Okoye, standing 6'4" and 266 pounds, was the biggest force in the league running through the trenches. So during this game, Okoye, who had been destroying the Bucs defense all game, found a gap in the middle and bulldozed his way right through. And what looked to be a sure chunk play, the running back after passing the line of scrimmage was met by Atwater dead in his tracks. The safety walked away from this hit unscathed, while Okoye clearly had his clock cleaned out. However, the former Broncos safety probably had his best game in Super Bowl 32 against the Packers, a game where he collected 6 solo tackles, 1 sack, 2 passes defended, and a forced fumble. Anyways, what do you guys think about this list of the hardest hitting safeties? Was there anyone who was left off this list but should have made the cut? Let me know in the comments section below. And if you enjoyed this video and want to see more of this type of content, make sure you drop a like. Anyways, thanks for tuning in.